as if there'd been some cosmic arrangement to cluster the hottest men I'd ever seen into a single encounter. The man just behind the first was equally stunning. But I recognized the mischievous eyes, the half-smile, and the messy blonde hair. That was Chris Rose. The Chris Rose. The same one I'd barely been able to avoid hearing about any time I turned on the radio or the TV for the past few months once he got tangled up in all the engagement and wedding controversy. The final man through the door was cut differently than the first two, who, I realized as some latent knowledge bubbled up, were related. The third man wore a week or so worth of beard that grew in as black as his hair. Tattoos snaked up from beneath his collar and ran down over the backs of his muscular forearms and hands. The first man looked serious, the second appeared amused, and the last seemed troubled. Why did that immediately make me like him the most? He was wearing a baseball cap, and then I realized I recognized him too. He was the baseball pitcher who hadn't been drafted and went on to take the league by storm a couple years ago. Jack Kerrigan. The three huge men took one of the tables in the corner, and it was only as they were sitting that I realized a small child was trailing behind Kerrigan. The big pitcher gently lifted the boy and set him on the bench beside him. At a glance, I couldn't imagine it was Kerrigan's son. Kerrigan looked like some sort of dark-haired interpretation of the Thunder God. He was all wild power and lithe athleticism, with rugged features. He was the embodiment of masculine capability. And then the boy? I felt my heart go out to the little guy, because I knew how kids could be. He was small, with the tiniest, most cramped-in shoulders I thought I'd ever seen. He was also already pulling out a little sketch pad and leaning down to draw. Someone snapped in my ear. I flinched, realizing that like most of the customers in the store, I'd stopped to gawk at the procession of male models that had just strolled in and sat down to eat like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm not paying you to stand around," Tony said. "Honestly, my paycheck from you is like gas money. Tips pay my bills, Tony." "Is that the sound of you volunteering to get off my payroll, then?" Tony was a thick-set Italian without a hint of an accent or any sign of his heritage, except for olive skin and a gorgeous head of dark, wavy hair. "That's the sound of me getting back to work," I sighed. Tony grunted his approval and let me rush off to greet the table of Greek gods. The men hardly looked up at me as I took their orders. Chris ordered a round of beers for them while his brother and the bearded one talked in low tones about something that sounded important. I brought them their drinks along with some coloring tools for the little boy. He looked at them, picked up the crayon packet, and then gave it a disdainful little shove toward the center of the table. I quirked an eyebrow. "Crayola is beneath you?" "Too thick," he explained. Chris nudged his brother, who was still talking to Kerrigan. "I've heard that before." I gave him a look. Chris made a dismissive gesture at the menu, then smiled up at me in a, "you know what, who cares," kind of way. "Can you just pick out something that will fill up 3 very large men? Please and thank you." "You don't want—" "Do you mind?" the other man growled, turning to face me with the most terrifying glare I'd ever seen. I liked to think I had backbone, but in that moment I was glad I didn't, because it would have slid itself right out of my ass and onto the floor. I turned, went to the computer, and plugged in their orders. "Asshole," I muttered under my breath. I ordered something for the little boy I thought Griff would like. Grilled cheese, maybe? Then I plugged in one of our challenge pizzas for the 3 men. It was called the Gutbuster, and it consisted of 3 large pizza crusts combined together, quadruple the toppings, sauce, and cheese. To top it off, hot sauce was drizzled over the entire thing. It was utterly disgusting, and I hoped the jerk and his stuck-up ass would hate every bite. But Chris said to make sure they'd be full, and I couldn't think of how.